Hey gamers, welcome to another episode of the Weirdwood Manor board game vlog. So this episode, we've got something a little bit different. We're going to take the opportunity to do an interview. It's something I've been thinking about wanting to do in this series, taking the time to talk to some people, some other people behind the scenes on the project, that hopefully will help you guys learn more about the board game, the Weirdwood universe, and also more about the process of making board games. So this week, we're going to start with someone who has been involved with Weirdwood right from its original conception. So without further ado, here we go. So welcome, Luke. Thanks for taking the time to join us. I know you're busy with a lot of things related to Weirdwood and other projects. Why don't we get started by you taking some time to introduce yourself to our audience and tell them a little bit about what you do and how you are related to Weirdwood.
Great. Yeah, thanks for having me. So my name is Luke Minaker, and I am one of the co-creators, the art director and writer on Weirdwood Manor, which was an app that started out kind of as a small indie little kind of project we worked on. Our first own intellectual property that we started at Relish Interactive. We usually did service work, and then we really wanted to start telling our own stories and doing our own content. And so we came up with this idea of Weirdwood Manor. Me and the Paul Pattison and Sasha Raposo, who are the owners and president and CEO of the company. And we just kind of took it from there and started this story. And it went from being this little tiny indie project to being this big, giant, epic interactive novel thing that won a bunch of awards and just got kind of blew up, over a million downloads. And
Right.
yeah. So
That's
it's
cool.
been an exciting journey for sure.
So in terms of Weirdwood, so a lot of our audience who are kind of new to the board game project we're working on, and of course they're probably new to Weirdwood, and they might not have a lot of familiarity with the universe and what Weirdwood is all about. I'm wondering if you, as one of the co-creators, can share a bit of insight into to our viewers about what is the Weirdwood universe.
So the Weirdwood universe started with this idea that creativity is magic. One of the things that we all are really passionate about is just this notion of how creativity is this one human aspect that really allows us to change and shape our world and really impact our world. And so we wanted to just lean into that, give it a fantasy element, and just inspire kids to think about creativity as being this magical force that permeates the world. And so that's where it all started. And we started writing stories together and coming up with art, and just kind of spiraled out from there. And we ended up my background's in animation, so I've written and directed some small time animation things for like online series and for TV. But and then moving into Weirdwood was like really the chance for us to tell our own story and go from there.
That's cool. And so, I mean, you mentioned how you're one of the co-creators and you worked with Paul and Sasha on the project. I'm curious, like, how did you first kind of come to be part of that team and sort of start down that path to create this universe?
Yeah, so it all started one day when I was working on Barbie as an animator, and I was just like, you know what? I need something a little bit more challenging in my life. And I had been writing for quite some time, and I had all these stories just kind of brimming up inside me, and I really wanted to kind of take them and see if I could get something of my own kind of created. And I'm friends with Paul and Sasha, and I had worked with them previously in freelance work. So actually, the day I handed in my notice on the Barbie project was the day I called up Relish. I talked to Sasha, and I was just like, Sasha, I'm done with this. I need to write. I need to create a bit more, have more creative input. And he's like, oh, actually, we had this idea for an interactive storybook novel thing and would love you to be a part of that. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. So, and then the rest was just history. It actually started as a 3-month contract and it ended up being, well, now I've been with them since, yeah, for 8, 9 years. So
Wow,
yeah,
that's
it's been
cool.
it's been a while. So yeah, Weirdwood as this 3-month contract. kept getting extended because it kept getting bigger and bigger. And honestly, it was such an amazing journey because both Paul and Sasha really just trusted me and my vision, and were excited by it and excited to collaborate with it, and really just put a lot of their own. It took a lot of chances, to be honest. Like, put a lot of
Mm,
their own time and energy and money, their own personal money, even into the project to just make it come alive. And for
right.
that, I'm really thankful, and it paid off. So it
Well,
works.
I
Yeah.
mean that's cool because I think that also to some it parallels the board game project a little bit. Certainly, from my perspective, Paul has really had a lot of faith in me and this project and putting kind of dollars behind it and willing to kind of go down that road. And it's super cool and really invigorating to be in that scenario where you know that the team really appreciates creativity and bringing something new to people's lives that they're really going to enjoy. So, I mean, cool
Yeah.
gig for you, and I'm enjoying this process, a ton so far. I'm curious for you, having started originally on creating the universe and bringing the app into being, and now years later seeing that maybe turn into an animated feature, and now we're working on the board game. I'm curious how you feel about this transition of that original idea now sort of bleeding into all these other potential areas in the world.
Yeah. No, it's honestly a bit of a head trip. Like it's so cool to see something that, started out so small and just this kind of little idea branch out and have other artists and creatives kind of take their spin on it and
Right.
their take on the world. And it's such a big, I mean, it's such a big universe that has a lot of potential, just because the way we've set it up is that there's the real and then there's the fae. And the fae is this world where pretty much anything, myth, magic, imagination, can exist in the fae. So we lean a lot into like this, um, into mythology, but there's also like well-known stories and art pieces and stuff like that that can exist inside the Fae. And so there's just a lot of room for other creatives to kind of
Right.
take the world and make their mark. And just with that simple concept that creativity is magic and that it all exists, and it's not just in our heads. It all exists somewhere and we can interact with it, and it influences our world.
So it's really cool. I'm finding out how rich a world Weirdwood is and how it has all these different things to explore, and it's lending itself to the board game project really well. I know that you're a board gamer, Luke. We've talked about it and had a chance to play some games a little bit. I'm curious for you if there's any favorite board games that you have out there and maybe why you love them.
Yeah. So I really love tabletop games. So from board games to RPG tabletop stuff like D&D and Pathfinder, really into that kind of communal experience. I don't know if I have a favorite game, but I really love cooperative games. Dead of Winter is one of those cooperative games that I've been really enjoying lately. Um, I even like how you're trying to survive. There's like great artwork. There's a great kind of mechanic for surviving this zombie apocalypse in the dead of
Right.
winter. And but there's also this aspect of like somebody might betray you,
Right.
which is really fun. Another one is Forgotten Waters. I really love the narrative elements there, and just how you're, working together to just further the story. And that's kind of takes me to like RPG, which is, like a D&D thing, sort of thing, where you just are. It's really this kind of like a framework to do joint storytelling. And as a writer, storytelling is
Right.
very important to me. And it's something that I really love engaging with, especially with other people.
Cool. And so as someone who's obviously got both feet heavily into the Weirdwood universe and got both feet in the board game world, I'm kind of curious, from your perspective, why do you think Weirdwood lends itself so well to a tabletop game?
Oh man, there's a lot of reasons. I think, well, one of the things that jumps first to mind is just the potential for artwork and innovation, and just kind of immersing people in this sort of fantasy universe, which I think is really fun. But I like the setting of the manor itself, which is this kind of creepy old Victorian manor that has a lot of strange, weird, occultic sort of things going on, and just imbued with magic. So this idea of exploration and surprise and mystery,
Right.
I think is really great for a board game. I also really love, in the writing, one of the big themes is just coming together and connecting with other people and, solving things together. So, in the app, the kids go on this big journey to kind of like solve all these mysteries together and like fight danger together and, gain their own kind of magical powers and learn mastery over them. And I think that's one of the things that so far, from what I've seen, that you've really captured in the game, and that really excites me.
Yeah, yeah, it's cool. I mean, it's one of the things that spoke to me when I first played the app, that sense of exploration, adventure, that idea of cooperation and working together as a team to kind of get through all of these things that the app sort of presents to you during the story. That just felt that those were great things that we could pull into the board game. So coming back to the app, which was the genesis of where we're at today in terms of talking about a board game, the original app came out I think in
Mhm.
2015. It's had over I think a million downloads. I think you mentioned. Clearly, it's still super popular with people. I'm curious from your perspective why it remains so popular.
That's a really good question. I think that, good storytelling is just good storytelling, and it kind of spans the generations, and, people are still reading Lord of the Rings. And yes, I'm going to compare my work to Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, go
No, but I
ahead.
think I no, but seriously, not in the same category at all. But um, I do think that there is something about that kind of like coming to know yourself adventure,
Hmm,
coming to find where you belong, that really resonates with a lot of people. And because we all do it, right? Like we all are, especially around that coming of age sort of age. We all sort of kind of go out from our family and try and figure out who we are, and that's really what the ultimate kind of story is, like finding out who
right,
you are and where you belong. And that's a big kind of theme in Weirdwood Manor.
right,
But I think also you can't minimize the fact that people are excited by mystery and fantasy and um, something new, novelty, and there's so much going on. There's something around every corner in Weirdwood Manor, and it's not just the storytelling, it's the artwork, it's these secrets that permeate the manor, it's the
right,
games and puzzles that you have to
right.
solve.
All the
So
crazy
I think there's,
locations and people too. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, and you just never know what's around the corner. So
right,
I think there's a lot there to unpack and explore. And to be honest, it's one of the larger apps on the App Store. It's not, there's a lot of mobile games that are kind of like you got a little gameplay loop.
right,
And Weirdwood Manor is like a big story. It takes a good 8 hours to get through the whole thing. It's a novel.
right.
And so yeah, it's a big experience, and there's not a lot of those on for mobile devices.
Well, and I think I heard you once describe it as a novel meets a game meets um,
Yeah, that's kind of the original pitch, was like, okay, we're not just making a game. We're making a novel meets a movie meets a game.
right.
And so we came up with this term, living novel, which just kind of stuck. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's a great term. I think it's super appropriate for what it is. So with Volume One, which came out, 5 or 6 years ago, I know you guys are
Yeah.
working on Volume Two, and that's going to hopefully be out soon. Any kind of big changes? Anything you can kind of share with our audience? Isn't necessarily a spoiler about what's coming.
Yeah. Yeah. So with the original one, it was well, yeah, it was very small team. We were relying a lot on people that were really passionate, but maybe didn't have a lot of experience, including myself.
Right.
I mean, we're
I know
trying to
the I
carve
know
out
the feeling.
something brand new. Yeah, 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 totally. But now we have been able to hire, a bigger team, people that have been doing lots of different kind of aspects of game design and animation,
Right.
and so the quality of the work, of the artwork, the quality of animation, just the quality of everything all around is going to be next level. So yeah, I'm really excited to share that, get it out in the world, and see how people react. But it's definitely, it's been, yeah, like 6 years, and so
Right.
there's been a lot of even just technological improvements that are going to allow us to tell the story in a new and fresh way.
That's cool. So with this time that you spent on the original app, the next app that's coming, as someone who's working on the board game, I'm constantly surprised at all of the content of how rich things are. And I think about all the characters that are in there, Celia, Oliver, Eugene, and all their interesting powers. But then we've got kind of other creatures like the Burbits, or
Mhm.
the Door, or the Harrowites, or all these crazy sort of magical and technological gadgets in the game, like whose names half of them I can't probably pronounce. I mean, there's all this stuff in there. I'm kind of curious, like, where the heck does all this stuff come from and keep coming from? Like, what are you tapping into for all this stuff?
Yeah, yeah, that's a good question. I am really inspired by mythology. Always been since I was a little kid. I was always reading these books about Greek mythology, and then onto Norse mythology and Celtic mythology. And so I still actually spend a lot of time in reading these old works, and just even trolling Wikipedia for like people's interpretations of like what happened, and
Oh,
all
okay.
these different gods and monsters and stuff. And I find that super inspiring. And I think there's something there because it's a lot of those things have kind of permeated our culture, even if we're not aware of it on a like conscious level. A lot of those stories have kind of become part of our, yeah, just underlying subconscious and for
Right.
our culture. And so I think a lot of those things really hit home when you kind of like lean into them and maybe do a slightly different interpretation from what the actual myth is, but do it in a way that is a bit more modern, or just even a twist that'd be like, oh, I never thought of it that way.
Right.
So yeah, that kind of something that's familiar but also novel.
Right. Cool. Cool. So with all this stuff you've created, I wonder, do you have a favorite character or a favorite thing that exists in the world that really speaks to you?
Yeah. um, so many things actually. So um, I guess I really identify with Oliver. When I was younger, I was a little bit shyer, and I loved to draw, and um, yeah, so I that was kind of a bit of my thing. But as I was writing, I realized that Oliver, Eugene, and Celia all represent characteristics that I really identify with and that
Right.
have been a big part of my life. And I think that's why I was able to write them fairly well, is because I really understood, like, I was this kid at this age, and then I was more this kid at this age, and or in this group even. And so going back and forth, I feel like they're all little representations of who I've been or who I've wanted to be.
Right.
And so that was really fun. And I think, yeah, maybe Oliver I identify with the most, but all the other aspects of the other characters I also really kind of like, oh yeah, I really like that about, yeah.
So that's really cool, super awesome. And I know that my daughter loved reading and exploring the app when she was younger, and it's a great universe for kids. But the other thing that struck me, and we've talked about in terms of doing the board game, is the universe is so rich, and it does have these, from my perspective, these kind of like dark, kind of mysterious corners and characters, and I feel like it also really lends itself well to an adult audience. And I know for the board game that we're trying to create, we really want to create a board game that a kid could enjoy with their parents, but some hardcore board gamers can really get in there and find some interesting stuff. And I'm kind of curious from your perspective in terms of the universe, how well it's suited to that kind of range of ages, whether it lends itself to an older gamer essentially.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, with the story, honestly, we had so many, like, if you just look at the reviews, so many of the parents who were reviewing it are like, "This is amazing, my kid love it, but also I love it.
Right.
When's the next app coming out?"
Right.
And I think there's something kind of timeless and ageless about coming of age story, and because we all identify with it, we all had to go through that process. And so and I do also, with my writing and my art direction, I really like to push the boundaries of give kids the benefit of the doubt. There, some things might go over their heads, but I mean, a lot of that's how you learn too, right? It's like,
Right.
oh, not with having things go over your head, but I mean, but by challenging kids, not just giving them something that they're used to or that they always had. So it's about like really kind of pushing things, even leaning into some of the darkness, because that's what life is. It's not
Right.
fully darkness, but it's light and dark. And you
Right.
really, I think, do a disservice to people and children, especially if you're just focusing on the light all the time. And
Right. Yeah.
I think those are the books that resonate. Like Harry Potter has a bunch of darkness. Lemony Snicket's and Tim Burton movies, like, and those are all big influences in my life, and those are
Right.
the stories that I feel like are better at like shaping us and helping us understand the world.
Yeah.
So bringing that back to the game,
Right.
I think we even so there's some of that darkness there. There's some of that those big themes, but there's also like we're making a board game that we really want to play. I think that became
Sure.
pretty
Yeah.
clear in the
Right.
first few meetings that we had. And so I think that having these kind of cool Victorian Gothic themes for the art style, but are great and are going to really like lend well to this board game. But I also think that ultimately we're making a game that we want to play,
Right.
and that's what really excites
Yeah, that's cool. That's super cool. Okay. So I got one last question for you, and maybe it's a little bit of an unfair question. So obviously we've been having meetings, we've been talking about different design ideas and mechanics and how we deal with the theme and the world and everything. And obviously we don't have everything pinned down yet. We don't have a final game designed, but so
me.
we're in this early stages, but I'm curious with what you've seen to date and what we've talked about and what we've been working on, talking to our audience right now, who I assume are here primarily because they're interested in the board game and they want to know what it's about and they want to know, is this going to be a cool game I'm going to want to play? What would you say to that audience right now about why you think they're going to want to play our board game?
Well, as a board gamer, I really want to play it. So, but I think I really like I think that the cooperative aspect that's what I mentioned that I really love about games. I think leaning into that, I think I think all of the ideas that we've come up with so far are going to be um, really great to lean into that cooperative aspect. There's some of the other ideas that we haven't settled on yet, but that really sparked interest in me is tying back into the book, like this idea of a hallway that kind of changes with the time.
Right.
And however we work that out, it's a cool idea for the app. It's one of those parts of the story that I really love, and it was like I don't even know how that came out of my head, but I think it was like something about space time and just like this idea that time and space are inextricably linked. And like, what if there's a hallway that like is time is more important than space as to where you are?
Right. Right.
Anyways, so ideas like that you've kind of like pulled from the app and like integrated into a gameplay mechanic, that is really exciting.
Cool. Yeah. And it's interesting because there are so many cool ideas like that, so many cool mechanics and themes that we can pull through. So
Hmm.
still lots of work to do, but I think that we're on a
Hmm.
great path. And like you said, I mean, I can hardly wait to play the final game. Maybe that's normally the case for designers of board games, but I'm excited as well. So, anyways, I
Yeah,
want to say thank
awesome.
you, Luke, for taking the time to talk to me. It's really great to kind of learn more about the universe, how it came to be, and just to get to talk about sort of the board game in general. And I'll say to the people watching this, if you've got questions or comments for Luke or I, please leave them below. We'd love to get back to you. And yeah, thanks again, man. Appreciate the time.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thanks, Mike.
All right, so thanks again to Luke for taking the time. I hope that you enjoyed the interview. And as I mentioned, if you've got any comments or questions for Luke, leave them down below. I'm sure he'd love to hear your feedback and get back to you with any of his responses about what you might have to ask him. And also, I want to note that let me know how you feel about this interview in general and whether you want to see more of them. We've got some other ones lined up that we hope to do in the future. Some interviews with some other people involved with Weirdwood, but also some other interviews with other people who are involved in the board game industry in terms of other aspects of designing and manufacturing and getting board games into people's hands. So, if you want to see more of them, let me know. Hope you enjoy this one, and until next time, keep board gaming.